Original Firefighter is the podcast and apparel brand that celebrates the heritage and traditions of the American Fire Service. Join us each week for lively discussions that aim to inspire, educate, and entertain, all in the effort to support mental health and well-being for first responders. Please subscribe, hit that bell, and follow us wherever you listen. Let's get into the show. Well, let's get into it, folks. We got another episode of the Original Firefighter, and we have with us Phil Nedved again, and we have a great show for you. So let's get right into it. We got some things to get to. The headlines are very interesting right now, especially with the fire service. I've been thinking about this because there's been so much saturation about Doge.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Just say that right now. You know, like Doge is awesome. Sorry, it's great. But there's a lot of other things that are happening too, right?
Yeah.
So, like I'm saying, is that the media cycles are being just totally eaten up by everything, you know, that Trump is doing, or you know, the first 30 days of Trump is administration and Doge and all that, and you know the email that everyone's you know, having a conniption fit about,
losing their minds over.
They really are.
Five questions, right? Answer or five things. List 5 things.
And it's like, why? So, like, if my employer sends me an email, and like, at what point did they say in the job description that they must approach with a certain level of tone and demeanor that suggests that I should be wrapped in a cuddly blanket at all? You know, and you know.
You know, I was just having a conversation with a group text kind of thing, and we were kind of talking about it. And one guy's like, "I'm suspicious, right? How would I feel if a third party came in and, you know, asked me to say what I've done?"
But it's not a third party.
Well, and that's that was my response. I said, "Well, I look at it a little bit differently, and we can all have our opinions. I don't disagree with you. And there's some things with it that I'm questioning, right? What Doge is doing. Not that I'm fearful that they're going to get all your information, because let's be perfectly clear, Elon Musk owns the largest social media platform out there with millions and millions of people on there.
Yeah.
He has your information. You gave it to him willingly already. So, you know, it doesn't bother me for that. And these other people are federal employees, just like there were federal employees under Biden. And Trump
mind you, that social media platform was about to pretty much implode.
Right.
You know, again, showing that when he gets involved, things usually do turn out pretty damn good.
Right.
But, you know, again, I know that there's the faction out there that hates what's happening. And then there's a large other group right now that's going, no, this is exactly what we wanted.
Right. Well, and so the discussion was like, I mean, we are literally going through it every year. We go through it as goal settings.
Yeah.
Tell me 3 to 5 things
that you plan
that
to
you're going to accomplish this year.
Yep. And then you do your mid-year check-in, and then you get the final eval and they look back at the year and they go, well, let's see how you did.
Right. So to me, it's like literally what they're doing. They're just doing a goal setting. Hey, what have you accomplished so far? Maybe this is the end of the goal setting, right? Maybe it was what did you accomplish? Okay, now do it again.
Yeah.
Right. Set yourself up for the year. And at the end of the day, it's not Elon Musk. It's Donald Trump. All federal employees. You know who the boss is? Donald Trump, the president of the United States. So, it could have been a recommendation from Mr. Musk.
You know, and I think it's funny too if you consider those who get offered really any kind of position, whether it's an official government position or some type of advisor role, if it's the president of the United States, make a name up,
right?
Okay, so that those who get upset because if you hear the T word, then you know they lose their minds. Pretend that there's just the president of the United States, and that president came to you and said, "I want you to serve." Who turns it down? Who? Show me who does not say, "Yeah, I will absolutely." And that's where they get the phrase, you know, "I serve at the pleasure of the president."
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So, and the thing that I love that what's happening there at Doge is that you know, this is like any other you know, company around the world that would basically go to a third party and probably pay that third party millions of dollars to do an internal study of how they can cut and turn a profit. It's basically Office Space, right?
Government efficiency is in the name. They're trying to make
right.
it more efficient. And how can you find that out if
right.
you don't know what people are doing?
And that's the best part, is that they don't even have to they don't have to bring in some special, Baker Tilly third party,
right.
Do this huge stupid study for 5 years, and then it comes out as this huge journal,
right.
that, and then they're like, okay, let's now start to make cuts.
Right.
And the other thing too, and then we'll get into what we really want to talk about here. The other thing about it too that is totally being overlooked is that we are in fact in a huge debt crisis. We are. I mean, Warren Buffett right now has basically said we are in a bubble. They have basically held right now their holdings. They're holding back in their investments because they're not. I mean, we're talking about Warren Buffett,
right.
the guy that pretty much everybody uses as the barometer of investments, and he's saying, no, we're in a bubble right now, and I'm holding tight. Things are not looking good.
I would just see what Nancy Pelosi's throwing her money in, and I would
So the thing is that, when do we start throwing, the water out of the boat? Because, so that boat doesn't sink.
Yeah.
And if we don't do it now, when are we going to do it?
I think there's some good things and that are being accomplished. Also, we really don't know. And we kind of talked about it before, of just the information. Mm-hmm. Right, we're getting a lot of different information from different places. I know I was talking with someone, they were mentioning, what DOGE is cutting from that USAID $2 billion worth is toward the American farmer. Mm-hmm. And if we stop those payments, those small family-owned American farms can't survive.
Right.
So then what happens? Who buys that farmland? Who does that? And you look and could be a foreign country and foreign government, maybe like China, who owns quite a lot of farmland already in the U.S. Could be a private citizen like a Bill Gates, who owns a lot of farmland already. So it is interesting to kind of maybe look in more, and I'm not saying I don't like Elon Musk. I am dubious of some of the things that he's doing. Mm-hmm. Right, I'm do question it, and I think that's fair.
Yeah.
We've always said, question it. Questioning is a good thing.
Sure.
Right? Whether it's a virus or a vaccine or a state-run media or whatever it is, question it and get the information and make those logical decisions. But I'm excited. I think there's a lot of good coming from it. I'm more excited with the FBI and how that's looking, but maybe that's another topic for another show.
It did get, why not? Hey, it can be for this show. It is getting interesting. I did think the other day when we have the assistant FBI director, right? And what's
Dan Bongino.
Yes, Dan Bongino. And there again, so I think what's funny is that just about everyone that is being put into these roles, they themselves they're kind of bigger than life people, and not just because they are famous type people,
right?
Which they are. But it's almost like I wouldn't be surprised tomorrow if Joe Rogan was announced to be,
the assistant Health and Human Services right. Secretary with RFK.
With RFK, exactly. Like I feel like that's what we're getting.
Pull that shit up, Jamie.
Yeah, right. Yes, exactly. But let's shift for a minute because, we've been talking for, and this has kind of gone over several of the past podcast episodes. I've been, doing our best here at Original Firefighter to look at things that are currently happening in the fire service. And that, could be, the natural disasters that we saw at the end of 2024. Obviously, the terrorist attack in New Orleans on, the first of this year. And obviously, the LA City, LA County, Palisades, and Malibu, the Eaton fire and the Palisades fire pretty much consumed all of, the month of January, mm-hmm. the news cycles, right? And we were waiting to see what was going to be the fallout, basically. And we know the physical fallout. The damage is real. It's terrible. So much lost, human life lost, and people trying to put their lives back together. And here we are at that moment, and the mayor has stuck her neck out there and said, "Yep, I have my scapegoat."
Yeah,
and it's exactly who we thought it was going to be. We knew that it was going to be the LA City Fire Chief.
Yeah,
Kristen Crowley. So Kristen Crowley has been fired, terminated, let go, based on the press conference that Mayor Bass was leading. Sounded like a pretty brief, meeting between her and the former fire chief, and it was, you're terminated, you're gone, you're out.
Yeah.
I find it to be, and I've been, kind of looking at what is being said out there on social media. What are people commenting on, the reporting of all this? And it is, I'll just say it that for the most part, it's about 95% favoring the fire chief, Kristen Crowley, saying, there's a lot of it out there that's saying they all need to go.
Yeah.
And I could probably go along with that. Like if show me some of I want to be able to look at all the facts, and then I'll make a determination that, right, it looks like, everyone kind of failed, if
right,
you will. And that's what it does look like on the surface. But it's amazing that the comments are, nope, she's the wrong person to be fired. It's the mayor that should be fired, Mayor Bass.
Well, how do you fire a mayor?
I don't know. How do you do it?
Elections.
I mean, well, you do, right? You have a recall, right?
Yeah. Yep.
They can recall. I mean, you could have a revolt,
right?
I'm not speaking of I'm not
revolution.
Yeah, I'm just saying you could have a public opinion outcry so loud. That's what I mean. I don't mean like revolt, like don't go burning down any more cities.
Right.
We don't need that in America. What we need is the public.
Had 2020.
Yeah, exactly. We did,
2025.
20, right? 20. Well, and I mean the financial loss of the fires themselves it's just. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what that final number is.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is we can all have an opinion, and not to knock the general public, but I think our opinion on it is a little bit more in experience of actually being involved in large incidents and maybe failures of operations and success in operations. But I think all of us have to just hold, wait. I mean, there's going to be an incident after action report and, all these things. And we don't know everything that's progressed, right? Because there's a lot of blame to go around. I think the biggest frustration is I would like to see I like when people in leadership own up to their mistakes, and actually say like, hey, there were a lot of issues that happened with this, but the buck stops with me, and I have the overall authority and in charge, right? And now there's certain things that can happen, but even as me as a company officer, if there's a failure on my company, whether I was part of that incident or even something to where it was team members of mine that had a failure, I'm still going to take accountability, because if it was an issue because of training, that's on me, Right. And I wish. So, I mean, with this fire, it wasn't just the fire. It was everything leading up to the fire, right? There were preventable things that occurred years ago that they could have prepared for and prevented this from happening.
And let's be a little bit more accurate here, that it wasn't, we keep, the fire, there were 5 fires.
Right.
There were five different fires that were burning, just complete, like firestorm.
Right.
Hell on earth type stuff, right? And and to your point, I also agree. It would be amazing to have this particular chief to step up to the microphone and say, this is what happened, and this is the good, and this is the bad, and then this is the part that I solely have to take responsibility for, right?
Yeah.
And I like the details. I really do. I think that's what we pretty much all want. I mean, people tune into this show or any other, show that there or, social media type informational outlet where you're trying to gain information.
Right.
And so details do matter.
Yeah.
And that's what we get ticked off about is, and especially you look at this press conference that basically followed after they fired Kristen Crowley. The press conference itself had very few answers.
Right.
And that's what, I watched it and I'm like, why am I feeling so kind of like tense about this press conference? And it's because they basically, wheeled her out like Hannibal Lecter and basically shunned her and said, she did a terrible job. She didn't do her job.
Right.
We'll say that's what the gist is that she didn't live up to her performance, did not live up to expectations. Mm-hmm. And then all the things that the mayor kept repeating, and she must have said it 8 or 9 times, was, I don't want to look back. I'm looking forward. And that to me is the telltale sign right there. That's a little bit of Shakespeare right there, where it's like the lady doth protest too much, methinks.
Yeah.
Like you keep repeating this thing where you just want to look forward.
Right.
Let's go forward. Don't look over there. Don't be over there looking behind that curtain.
Just go ahead and forget your failures.
Because that's my failures, right? That would be the mayor herself going, yeah, I really fucked up here. But she's not going to do that.
Right.
And she's going to let all these other people be put up on the chopping block and probably, chop most of them herself.
Right.
To make it now look like, see, I'm doing my job.
Right.
See these people? I got rid of all of them.
I think,
so hopefully hopefully the what do you call it? The Angelinos, right? Am I saying hopefully you're saying am I saying that right, Aaron? Is it the Angelinos?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure you're still awake in there.
Just checking.
Yeah. So I just hope that they put the mayor up on the chopping block and do the right thing, get rid of her.
Yeah. The biggest thing I think there are two glaring things that the mayor kind of put on the fire chief. The first one was, well, they didn't give us proper notification that there was going to be such an issue on January 7th when the fires began.
Weren't all the weather outlets basically saying for 3 days at least prior that there was something coming? Yeah.
So
we're over here in Little Rockford, Illinois, and we knew what was coming up against LA.
I'm a big fan of facts and timelines of things. So on January 2nd, the National Weather Service warned on its X feed of a potential for extreme fire weather conditions beginning January 7th, so they even gave the date.
Right.
The agency's forecast escalated on January 3rd to major risk, take action, and critical fire conditions. The next day, Mayor Bass left for Ghana as part of her presidential delegation to meet with them, and by January 6th, the agency was blaring on X, as the National Weather Service, heads up, a life-threatening, destructive, widespread windstorm is expected Tuesday afternoon through Wednesday morning. Frightening wind forecasts in a winter when the LA area had barely seen any rain were featured in numerous news reports. And you know what I have a thumbs up to LA Times because that's from their article. So it was obviously preparation was not there on many parts.
Sure.
Right? I mean, that's part of the failure of the fire chief to prepare to have
but with that
in place,
information alone, what you just went through, how does the mayor then still decide, I'm getting on a plane, I'm going to where'd she go? Ghana?
Yeah, Ghana.
She goes to Ghana, right?
And with their female president there, I believe. And
whatever. And I don't care.
Yeah.
Because politicians do that. Right? They take off. They go gallivant a little bit, and they do goodwill. I'm not saying I know how the tone sounds like everything that a politician does is bad. We vote them in.
Right.
Let's keep that straight.
Yeah.
They become a pretty good target because we put them in that bullseye all the time.
Yeah.
Because we need someone that we need to, when things are going wrong, we want to be able to throw the dart and say, well, we put you in that position. And now this has happened, and we're holding somebody accountable.
Right.
But yet, that's the point, is that they find some way to dodge that responsibility, or they put it onto somebody else, like they're doing in this particular situation, and to make it more about the mayor and the decisions of that council. So here's the facts: 7 months before the fires, the LA City Fire Department was cut $17.6 million. Now, that's only about 2% of the overall budget, which for 2024 was $819 million. So, 2%. There's going to be people out there who be like, 2%, what's that? Like, how could that have made, much of a difference? I don't know that answer. I don't, this whole thing about that 1,000 more firefighters could have been kept on. Right. That's all good and fine. But from what we all saw with our own eyes, from coast to coast, if you turned your TV on or looked at your, phone and whatever, I don't care if you had 10,000 firefighters, you weren't putting any of those fires out without water.
Right.
And let me say that one more. Where the F is the water? Right. And how had that not risen to the level of criticality prior to this incident? Why weren't the politicians discussing this heavily? Not just discussing it, but funding it.
Right.
And fixing that issue.
And I think that's where the failures go beyond the city of Los Angeles, right? Up to the county and to the state. So the governor there, Gavin Newsom.
Right.
There it is.
There it is. There it is. We like it. We like doing it.
But yeah, I mean, so that's where failures across the board, right? Did the fire chief have blame? Absolutely. Did the mayor have blame? Yep. How about the county? Yep. So I got to imagine that there is a city emergency operations director, right?
Oh, I'm sure.
For LA. Why is it incumbent upon the fire department to notify the mayor's office of the significant weather issues that are going to impact on January 7th? They even gave the date. That's the most key thing there.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a conspiracy theorist in the sense of, so we're saying we did nothing to stop it, so potentially you let it happen.
Yeah. And I don't think there was getting out of this because, it's the pun is real here, where it's like it was the perfect storm. Yeah. The perfect storm here, they could have had 1,000 extra firefighters on duty. Maybe there would have been 50 or more extra engines staffed, and they would have been out. As I understand it, they would have probably been out in the neighborhoods patrolling actually. Yep. And could they have potentially put out fires that are small before they grow to become these big, huge conflagrations? Let's go down that road and say that could maybe have happened.
Right.
But I think that that's the elements of this situation were so perfect and so ripe that 10,000 firefighters would not have stopped this from happening. If you don't have the water system in place to support the operations of the fire department, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, and the biggest thing, it's resources, right? And they were screaming about resources. The chief openly was calling the mayor out in an open letter and open forums of staffing resources, right? So resources aren't always the manpower, the bodies, but also the equipment. Right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
They had how many fire apparatus that were broken down because their maintenance facility is short-staffed and they can't get through it. Yeah. Right. So I think it was like 48 apparatus that were broken down that weren't able to be utilized.
And I think that's I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's the point that's being made. Again, I want to walk, a little bit of a line here where it's like, I don't want it to sound or come across that, me particularly thinks that the former fire chief should be in place. I'm not sure. She's a 25-year veteran of the department. She rose up through the ranks. I've already seen it online. She was a DEI hire. No, she wasn't a DEI hire. She was already hired.
Right.
She's been there for 25 years.
Yeah.
I don't know if she was put in place in the fire chief role. I don't know if she fit certain boxes that they were looking for particularly. You know what I'm talking about?
Sure.
Or if it was all based on merit. I don't know. I don't know who she was or who she is. However, I do know what's being played out in theater-like style, which is these two are, especially the mayor. I think she's absolutely making herself look like a clown.
Yeah.
Flat out. She's just flat out, And I believe that she's far in over her head.
Well, and it's the politicians that run these departments, right? Because she's overall in charge of the fire department as the mayor of the city, but no understanding or background or really any knowledge of what we do and how we do things. We talked about the first reason she, said she was releasing her of her duties because there was no notification and she feels there was a failure in communication, all that. The second piece was that insubordination part, to where the fire chief refused to do an after action report that was requested by the fire commission.
Yeah.
And the union president came out for the LA firefighters, said that that's not the arena for this. There's already an after action report that's being worked on. And LAFD is assisting with those, and because yet again, not 100% how California works, and when they have these major incidents like that, but there is another group that's working on that after action report. So there's no insubordination. It's your perception of how you think it should be done, but yet again, someone who's in charge of the department but has no understanding of what actually takes place.
I know about this whole after action report thing, and first and foremost, I've done a lot of them.
I've sat on many of yours. It's really weird. You were I would say the black cloud of the department. You had a stretch for sure.
For sure, yeah. And so here again, after action reports are so invaluable. I mean, if again, that's the part that's just sort of like crazy to me, where the mayor in this particular situation, Mayor Bass, is saying she's been let go, terminated. Here's the reasons why. They're very vague. I already said that. Yeah. The reasons why are very, very vague, except for this one part where it's like, well, she refused to do this after action report. And it's like, look, I'm not here to claim that any of my after action reports would measure up to the level of what an after action report would look like in this particular situation.
Right.
I mean, this isn't something that you just whip up overnight.
Yeah.
This would take months of data gathering.
And a team of people.
And putting that data together in a way that can be understood and consumed by many people within the department and outside the department. If you're attempting to make change, real change, and you're trying to influence your city council members to make that change with you, to go all the way up to maybe even the governor's desk of the state of California.
Yeah.
You're trying to get to that level so that you can get the funding to fix the real problems. Your after action report, you'd have to have your top best people on that project. And it's not going to be something that you get to, you don't get to whip this thing out and have it understood just overnight. It's going to take time.
Right.
I am very suspicious that this is I think it's this thing where they just decided, how about if we just say it's this?
Right.
And then we can just move on.
It's a scapegoat.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. I think it's absolutely disgusting.
That's who she is, unfortunately, and like you'd already said, like, we don't know if what led up to this, and maybe she should be held accountable for some of her actions and some of her role in this. But just to put 100% of the blame on her is unacceptable. And
the one I'll tell you who I want to know if they still have a job is that knucklehead that did the PR video. We talked about it in a previous episode, and she's a chief herself. She's like deputy chief of public relations, right? I believe it is. Making the comment about your husband being if your husband was in a fire, I think he got himself in the wrong place.
Yeah.
It's like, really?
Yeah.
And I've asked this question, like, did somebody else sign off on that PR campaign video?
When you're the boss in charge of PR, you can do whatever you want, I guess. That's
so
cool.
There's another one that they can cut to lighten the load. This episode of the original Firefighter Podcast is sponsored by Castle Contracting. Castle Contracting offers commercial and residential restoration, leading the industry in roofing, residential siding, gutters and downspouts, egress window installation, storm damage assessment and repair, and solar energy, saving you money and time. If you want to be treated like royalty, contact Castle Contracting to schedule a free inspection. Call them at 877-512-4207 or go online and visit castleexteriors.net. That's 877-512-4207, or go online and visit castleexteriors.net. Serving Illinois, Wisconsin, and Kentucky, Castle Contracting has you covered. Your home is your castle. Call Castle Contracting today. So anyways, I think what's interesting too is that it sounds to me like there's a movement to try to reinstate her. I don't know that that's going to happen, but she seems, Kristen Crowley, the former fire chief of LA City, seems to have the support by the rank and file.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing. She's got so much time to appeal. I think it's like 14 or 15 days to appeal.
Yeah.
But then she needs 2/3 of the community or the other politicians. I don't know if they're aldermen or whatever they are, but it needs 10 out of 15 to get the position back. I don't know, at that point, 25 years on, do you want to go back?
What if Doge were to go into LA City Fire or just LA City and do a house cleaning?
He'd probably come walking in with the sink again. Let that sink in.
Yeah, right.
I'm here.
That's funny. Anyways, so what else? Anything else in the headlines that you want to hit on?
Yeah, I mean, I thought I'd bring a little video in for you, and we can kind of break it down. It's a shooting video, but there's some firefighters involved, as all of us in the fire service know. 80% of our calls are EMS.
Yep.
So just warning, there may be some graphic content here where we'll try and cut that stuff out.
Yep.
I don't think we need to see, the whole thing, but I'll just give you a brief overview. So it's a code P or psych patient mental health issue incident. So fire department gets on scene. It looks like it's a potentially a high-rise apartment building. It actually takes place in Charlotte. So they come in and police are there also, just because the 911 call takers dispatch what they dispatch because of the information that they received from the 911 call. So we can start with the 911 call and kind of talk about that and what our response would be or what typical responses are. And
let's do that.
And go from there. Yeah. Pretty dynamic situation. Things change. And that's one thing we always have to be
Charlotte 911, do you need police, fire, or medic?
Oh, hi, I need police.
Alright, and where do you need police?
Actually, I need a medic.
Alright, hold for medic.
No!
What's the urgent of the emergency?
So we'll go ahead and pause it there.
Yeah, I was going to say, can we pause it for a second? Did they just transfer?
Yeah.
Did they do that?
Crazy, right? Yeah.
So she literally just got cut off and was like, hold for medic.
Yeah.
That's a new one. I've never heard that one.
Yeah, give me a moment here. We're gonna put you on someone else now. Just hold for a second. We don't know how long that was too. I mean, what if they're slammed? What if they have so many call takers and you're on and it's like you're waiting for another minute and a half? Like, oh boy. Yeah,
leave us if there's anyone out there that's listening or viewing this, leave us a message and tell us if what your department does. If there's a department out there that does a transfer of the call based on fire EMS or police. I mean, I'm just used to everything coming to one center and the call handler, the call taker just
would get that to the appropriate dispatcher, but they're still getting that information. Getting everything.
But that was like the fastest. Like hold for a minute. Yeah. Like
medic, police, fire, medic. I need police. Okay, go ahead. What's your call?
Yeah.
Actually, I need medic. Hold.
Yep.
Click.
All right, go ahead. But
so it kind of starts off. You kind of hear the female calling. Not a whole lot of information was gathered from that, right? And then you hear, male voice in the background, kind of incoherent. She's stressed out, which I props to our 911 dispatchers because they do a phenomenal job. I mean, I know we both have sat through, PIRs, reviews, after actions where we play the 911 call, and to hear. I know I was on an incident one time where it was a fire fatality. There were 3 children that were deceased under the age of 18. And to listen to the 911 tapes from that and the bystanders that were calling it in, I don't know how they were able
was that
to decipher.
Was that a fire west side?
It was, Christmas Eve.
Yeah, Christmas Eve.
Yeah, 23rd into the 24th.
Yeah, into the 24th, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and instant commander of that was Wortman, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Shout out to Mark Wortman.
Yeah. And yet again, so I was the first arriving. I was the driver engineer that day. But listening to that call, multiple calls, and it's hard to decipher the information. People are, talking fast, not clear, pulling the phone away from them to be able to gather the information. They do a phenomenal job. So
I'll go a step further and tell you that, referencing back to, you saying all the after action, we call them PIRs, post incident reviews, but it's an after action report. And the number of them that I did as a incident commander, I will say that when I started gathering those parts of information to complete the after action report, it was always the 911 tapes that privately kind of got me choked up a lot of times.
Yeah.
It just being honest, that you'd listen to them and you wouldn't know, you'd hear the tone and it'd be 911, where's your emergency? And then whatever was on the other end of the phone was just crazy.
Yeah.
So upset. I can remember one situation where you actually heard the woman, she called, she said, I think that I think my boyfriend is stalking me. My ex-boyfriend is stalking me. And this had gone on for almost an entire morning. There had been kind of some police interactions. This woman reported that she thought her ex was stalking her. She had left the house to take care of a child, and then she returned to the house, and she was calling 911 to say, I think I'm being tracked or followed, something along that line. Turns out he was in the house.
Holy
and
shit.
You literally hear on the 911 call, you hear her talking to the dispatcher. The dispatcher is taking information, and then you just hear this blood-curdling scream because he attacks her.
Yeah. And
beats her to a pulp. And she lived unknown at that time. The woman that was attacked, her mother shows up, and then he kills the mom. So he kills the mom. He pretty much was attempting to kill the girl, the ex-girlfriend. But she did live, but she suffered terrible, but the point of it was, it's the 911 call was, you just hear this, all of a sudden, just everything changed.
Yeah.
And I remember that one kind of put me back on my heels.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
we they're kind of the unheard, forgotten of debriefings and that stuff too.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Because I try to, if it's a significant call or something, I try and call them afterwards to give them a heads up of what happened. I think they deserve that, and
yeah,
that's good or bad, whatever
they are
it was,
out there,
a little bit of closure.
The limbo, right?
Yep.
They take the call, they dispatch the resources. They, maybe they are dedicated to the call while the fire is going on, or
right,
whatever's happening. But sometimes they definitely get left out of the final outcome of things, right?
Yep.
But okay, so go ahead.
Back to it. So fire's there on a medical incident with police, unknown kind of what's going on, but I assume it's some sort of mental health thing going on. So yet again, in somewhat of an apartment complex. So when we talk about that, we always talk about Knox box keys.
Yep.
And that. So we can go ahead and press play, and we'll break it down a little bit more. This is a police body cam.
So what you're seeing here is that the fire department is waiting for someone to answer the door here, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and you can hear some things going on inside the apartment, right?
Yep. Now you hear screaming.
Traffic, unfortunate injury. I hear fighting inside. I hear people screaming.
So now whoever is the Knoxbox key guy for this department, with driver, officer, whoever, now working to get the door open with Knoxbox keys.
Right.
Unfortunately, you know, we can pause here real quick. So unfortunately, this is a great video, and this is not to knock these guys at all or say anything they did was wrong.
Yeah,
right?
no.
But I think we always learn, and us in not on this department can take something away from this, and that's how we learn. And because whether we train actually hands-on or we train by watching these types of videos, we can take note of it. Because if it didn't happen to me, well, I might never know, but it happened to somebody else. So now I can take that and utilize that for my career moving forward of, oh, I'm never going to get caught with that, right? Or that's not going to happen to me. So the biggest thing for this one is trying to figure out the Knoxbox keys for this apartment. I think this is where good knowing your still territory, knowing your buildings, knowing those keys, and who knows, this could have been all of a sudden one day they came and they replaced the locks but didn't put the new keys in the Knoxbox.
Yeah, that goes on all the time. I mean,
right.
I'm sure, for the firefighters listening and watching, that you've been in this situation before where you think you're prepared.
Yeah.
You got the keys out of the fire truck, you go to that Knoxbox, you open up the little lid and get the keys out, and you walk into the building and ready to go. Like, you think that's ready to go. But then you find out, like in this situation here, where none of your keys work. Right. Now, who does that fall on? It depends. Depends on, well, with the fire department piece of it, when was the last time that you pre-planned the building?
Right.
When was the last time that you checked in with management to make sure that things hadn't changed? However, obviously there is a responsibility management-wise,
right, of
these buildings and things of that nature that, you need to let the fire department know that you've made certain changes. If you've changed locks, if you need keys to be updated in that Knoxbox, I mean, if the fire department doesn't know, they're going to use the universal tool, which is a Halligan bar, and do some damage.
Well, so we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Because you can actually hear a request for some irons at one point. So yet again, another good training of you go into a high-rise structure. Maybe that's a tool we're bringing with us. Called dependent, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And we can hear too that I assume the officer has already requested that PD step up their effort. Yep. So let's go ahead. I mean,
their initial response probably a fire apparatus, fire company, an ambulance, and one officer. So
okay.
About 10-4.
You said this was in Charlotte?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm trying to find just a maze up here.
And it's so frustrating, right? You're just like,
and then the pressure's on. And then the pressure's on. You don't get it the first three keys.
Right.
You're starting to sweat a little bit.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, for fire department, you're in a whole nother world now, where in today's world that you don't know what's on the other side of that door.
Yeah. So pause it real quick for me. So right there, whoever the guy in charge of the keys is just requested a set of irons to be brought to him. So whoever's the elevator guy is now going down, getting that. So that's why I think, yet again, another good thing. After I saw this video, so this is probably a year and a half, 2 years old, this video.
Okay.
After I watched this, I made sure that call dependent and knowing our buildings and our still, if it was a fall victim, all right, maybe I'm going to bring my irons with, right? If it was a mental health psych kind of call, maybe I'm going to bring my irons with. If it's, the difficulty breathing call in their ambulatory and their, maybe I'm not. I got my keys, especially if I know my building well. Also, the other thing is, what type of door am I dealing with, right? If I'm dealing with a wood frame door, like, all right, I could probably, my boot's a pretty good tool sometimes, but if I'm going and it's a steel door, metal door of some sort, maybe I'm. And
I'm not. I know what I'm about to say is that I know every firefighter out there has, done the horse kick or the shoulder into. I mean, we've all done it.
Oh yeah,
you can do it.
I've done it.
Yeah, and if it works, it's kind of cool. We all kind of cheese on yourself a little bit where you're like, yeah, I kicked that door in, but if you don't get it on the first one, you can kind of make yourself look like a fool.
Yeah. Or if you blow your knee out.
Or if you blow your knee out or blow your shoulder out.
Yeah.
Or worse, if the door wins and defeats you and you bounce off of it. If you're seeing that one, that looks pretty fun too.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen a couple police officers where, they come in with that and, they...
Well, not to knock on the cops, but as we continue this video...
Okay, let's do it.
The door wins.
All right, let's do it. Oh, so he's trying to kick it.
Yeah. So the officer's trying to boot the door in.
All right. Which is the universal go-to when you didn't bring any irons or, any other tool. There was a time when we were requiring that you bring up a set of bolt cutters.
Yeah.
To cut that chain.
Yep.
But that kind of, some of the stuff doesn't stick. You do it for a while and people they stop bringing the, I don't know why.
Never needed it, so why would I need it now, right?
And it's a little bit of lack of discipline. Just being honest.
So if you heard right there was a gunshot.
Really?
Yeah. So there's a gunshot right there. So now fire's starting to, we're going to do what we do and back up.
But
so pause it real quick.
So the gunshot happens. Who was still trying to kick the door in at that point?
That was the officer. That was the
fire officer?
The police officer.
Oh, police officer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. Yeah, for this, I'm only referring to firefighters and officers as the...
Okay, okay. Fair enough.
So at that point, they hear the gunshot. Another officer comes rolling up, old crusty 25-year vet. Let's call him Chip, right? I like that name. He looks like a
or
Chip.
Carl.
Yeah. He's gonna Leonidas this kick on this door, and he's going to win.
All right, let's do it.
So pause it right there. So what a smooth transition. That's a guy that knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
That officer, that police officer. He kicked the door total of 3 times. The third kick, he knew he was going to get it the third time.
Yeah.
As soon as his foot came down, his firearm was drawn at that point. So that's a guy that's what we, that's on the fire side. I'm looking for smooth transitions, efficiency, effectiveness, right? When I'm throwing a ladder, little movements as possible, right? Get that ladder up. That guy trains and he knows what he's doing. I dig it.
Let's break it down just a little bit further before we start the video again. So, we've got the firefighters attempting to make access. They were using the keys, we assume, from a Knox box. The keys weren't working. They realized they got to go to conventional ways to get in, but they don't have any firefighting tools with them.
Right.
No one's got a set of irons up there.
Yeah.
So now we start to kick the door in, and while we're kicking the door in, we hear a gunshot inside the house, inside the room that they're trying to get into, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So we see the fire department, the firefighters on scene, they back down the hallway, right?
Yeah.
So that's it's like at what point when you hear the gunshot, where do we want fire department to go? Where do we want them to go back, to the end of the hallway? Do we want them to exit the building? What's the pilot? I know what we worked on here in our city.
Yeah, I would be interested to know what their policy is, and especially if they've got an SOP on violent scenes to where you remove yourself from that, get in the apparatus, and you're 3 blocks away.
Does it change it if because I towards it, as you know, at the end of my service with the city, I was working on rescue task force.
Yeah,
and I was at a point where as we gained, the hope was to gain more and more equipment, ballistic vests, things of that nature. I was at a point where I was willing to go down the road of saying, I think we're getting close to where we wanted the ballistic vest to be kind of worn on every call. This episode of the original Firefighter Podcast is brought to you by Benny's Slots, Wine, Spirits, and Empire Gaming. With 3 locations serving the Rockford area, in Roscoe, McChesney Park at Nest, and Cherry Valley at the Harley-Davidson store, Benny's is the place with taste and enough luck to go around for everyone, provided by Empire Gaming. Each location offers fun and entertainment with weekly sports, events, drawings, and live music in a plush environment. As a side note, I recently had my retirement party this past summer at Benny's at Nest in McChesney Park, and they gave us the VIP experience all around. For the best atmosphere, for the best entertainment, head to Benny's for good drinks, good friends, and good times. Stop in at a Benny's location near you today. With the discretion of meaning that, and this isn't where we ended up at. You know, we ended up where we kind of picked and choose certain calls, which is fine. I mean, I think that you can have some leeway for company fire officers to you know, kind of determine, like, I think it's best for us to wear the ballistic vest on this particular call.
Right.
Now, if you're going to, you know, Safeway to help Granny up, get off the, you know, floor because she, you know, fell over at the grocery store or something, I don't know.
Right.
You know, some discretion there, sure.
So it's a high vis vest, right? I'm working in the
right.
roadway.
Yeah,
I should probably have my high vis vest on.
But that's But he, you know, here's a situation where, and again, I don't know if they're wearing any kind of protection at all.
No, they actually just have t-shirts on. That's part of the uniform.
Okay,
you know, t-shirts.
Yeah, I get it.
I dig it.
But yeah, based on what we're seeing here, you know, it's just interesting to you know, maybe, you know, some people leave some comments and say, tell us what you do. Yeah. Because it, you know, obviously in this, when you hear that gunfire, this changes.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I think, you know, putting myself in that position, I think you at least remove yourself from that floor. Hopefully you know that building well. Is that the only way into that apartment building, or is there another door somewhere that, you know, the potential perpetrator could exit to, and now I'm putting myself even closer to them?
Yeah.
But even removing yourself to another end of that hallway.
I think you got to get out of the potential line of fire.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. You know, you've got what looks like to be 2 police officers here. Handguns are drawn. Maybe there's a third officer. I can't see it, but there's at least 2, and we can see that their guns are drawn.
Yeah.
But you know, on the other side of that door, you might have the type of person that wins the gunfight. Right. And comes around or gets out of that, and now they're in that hallway with those firefighters at the end, and they become the next target.
Right.
So yep. I think I got to fall with. I don't think I know that I fall with. They at least got to get off that floor.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. And props to them, because they heard that gunshot, and you know, none of us know how we're going to react in a situation like that until we've been in a situation like that.
Right.
You know, so it's, they hear the gunshot. There's kind of a pause. Everybody hears it and correlates and like, oh, okay, that was a gunshot. And they all moved, right? I mean, they didn't stand around. It's a hard decision too to, you know, I think we're all aggressive, most of us, right? I'm aggressive, I guess. I can't speak for any other fire departments and what they do. Part of me is I want to get in there. I want to help. I want to help, right? And you have to pump the brakes and yeah, I'm not a cop. I don't have a gun. I don't have
their
a
job.
Yeah.
It is their job to go forward.
Right.
Now, there are cases, we know this, that they may hear gunfire as well and say, whoa, wait a minute. Let's just barricade.
Right.
You know, let's see how this thing plays out.
Right.
So that's a game time decision. Yeah. It looks to me like they're going to go forward here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're going in. So, one of the reasons, and it's kind of hard to see in this angle, the next video, so is another video, is the other officer's body cam. So it shows him walking up. But what you'll see is they kind of barricaded the door a little bit. There were things in front of that door. Mm-hmm. So that's why that initial officer who was trying to kick it in was having a little bit more difficulty than our King Leonidas, who showed up shortly after. So.
And that's a telling sign in itself that if you have a door that's barricaded on the other side, why is it barricaded? Right. Ask that question. Here again, this is kind of coming from the angle that what if you are proceeding, there is no police on scene. Right. Let's just play that out and say, well, what if the next box keys did work?
Right.
And you get it unlatched, but then you find that the door is barricaded.
Yep.
You might want to pause.
Right.
Something's fishy, right?
I literally just had that to where the door was barricaded. It was elderly lady, trouble breathing. She, doesn't live in the greatest apartment high rise.
Right.
Just put something in front of the door, so if it got knocked over, she would hear it.
Yeah.
Got to give her a little heads up, but
yeah,
I had to.
It's fair.
Put my shoulder in the door a little bit and knock that. I didn't pick it up afterwards. She made me do that.
Right.
No, but so it's up to you if you want to continue the video from here on out. I can tell you what happened rather than
let's just go with that. So let's go back to
from once they get inside, they find a person who's having some sort of mental health issue.
Yeah.
Whether it was drugs or anything like that, not sure. They don't really discuss that. But ends up having a knife. Both law enforcement officers go in. One of the officers gets stabbed in the neck with a knife.
Okay.
And the other officer ends up shooting and I believe killing the perpetrator at that point.
Yeah.
There was a victim in there when the gunshot went off, female victim who did have a gunshot wound from that. So now you have 3 victims essentially.
Yeah.
But just how dynamic of a scene that was to go to that. We're not sure what we're going into to this is potentially a mental health issue kind of call to potential, barricaded subject, battery, assault kind of thing.
I think, it's not just, this is going to be my personal take on it. And I'm going to go with the years of experience that I've had where I think with this situation, it becomes less important about the call that you were dispatched to.
Right.
And it becomes about the situation that you're facing at that moment. It's clearly if you got dispatched to a code, we call it a code P, but if you got a psych patient out there, okay, you're already on a hazardous scene.
Right.
Right. So it's a hazardous scene going right out of the door at the firehouse. As you roll out, you're going to a hazardous scene.
Yeah.
You don't know what, in this day and age, you just don't know what people are willing to do, whether they're willing to do it to themselves or do it to others, do it to those in uniform. The sky's the limit at this point from what we're seeing. And so especially the company officers, you have a total responsibility to the safety and protection of those of your firefighters.
Yeah.
When you hear, so now you're on scene, when you hear a gunshot, you hear, any of that type of thing, I think that absolutely just changes the whole entire game. Now, here again, I can't see what the officer may or may not have done in this particular situation, but my hope would be that the company officer is definitely asking for backup.
Oh, absolutely.
Not just police backup, but send another ambulance, send another fire company, get me a battalion chief, coming this way, because this thing has gone from 0 to 100 miles an hour.
Yeah. Resources are going to be what you need at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And we do know after that plays out, you had 3 victims. Right?
Yeah.
So you definitely need the resources for treatment and transport at that point.
Yeah.
I think those brothers out there in Charlotte did a phenomenal job, right? They're, lessons that'll be learned, right? Not saying that any of it was their fault. We don't know the whole breakdown of, why the keys weren't working, if what the issue was there. Maybe the keys were working and the door was ended up barricaded, right? But I think lessons learned could be, hey, if you're going to a high rise, we can trust the keys, but not always.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? So let's bring in something, a tool, whether it's a bar or
we're clearly saying bring the Halligan, bring a set of bolt cutters. You don't know if that extra little safety chain is there, and and there's ways to defeat all that stuff kind of thing. But we're trying to be slicker than a 6th grader here, where let's use the tools and the techniques that we've learned and be proficient. But I think it's what I find in the video here, and what we want to reinforce maybe is that when you got any potential level of violence that's going to start to bubble over, remove yourself.
Right.
It's not worth it. There's no glory,
right?
in taking one to the shoulder.
And it's crazy too how these mental health calls can change, and a lot of people just don't understand. Especially when you look at it from the law enforcement standpoint of trying to arrest certain suspects.
Right.
Right. And we've come into contact. There's been plenty of calls I've been on where police weren't there. And this is, we called for, trouble breathing. And this person is actually high on whatever drug they were on. This one specific one was a 110-pound female who was strong as shit, and it was myself, who's 6'5", 220 pounds. My partner Chase, who's been on the podcast before, 6'4", 220 pounds. We've got an arson investigator now, but prior to him going into that role, he was a Hall of Fame from college, Hall of Fame wrestler and football player. He's 6'2", 250 pounds. And then a guy who owns his own MMA gym, who's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And the four of us are, yet again, we're not trying to do harm to her, but it took four of us to kind of finally grab an extremity each to kind of hold her down so she doesn't hurt us, hurt herself, anything like that. Now, we're not doing any damage, but people don't realize, like, well, it's just a 110-pound female, right? It should only take one of you. It's like, yeah, if we were trying to actually scrap and I was trying to knock some sense into this lady at that point, but that's not the case. We're not trying to do any harm, and nor are the police officers that are there. They're trying to restrain and not hurt this person or themselves. So there's certain things that you have to take into account sometimes. Why did it take 5 people to hold her down? It's like, this is why. Right? Yeah. She's got 4 weapons on her, 2 arms and 2 legs. Right. You know, that can harm me or herself. But that's the thing, is these mental health calls are ever growing. Yeah. And you never know what the cause is.
I personally did see a real uptick in seeing or having weapons on the scene. Yeah. As you know, again, this was just, you know, it would be there every now and then on particular calls. You know, we're talking years ago when I was on the ambulance. You know, sure, there were times where there were weapons in the house, known or unknown, I'm sure. What I'm referring to is that what I had started to see probably within, you know, like the last 5 years, like around 2019, 2020, and leading up to last year, where I was getting more and more reports from the company levels that they had a gun on scene. Yeah. You know, they had been called to PD, or I should say, I remember, you know, this one particular call where they were called to someone that was slumped over the wheel of a car, you know, the steering wheel. Yep. And, you know, that in and of itself, it sounds benign, right? But there's a lot of potentials. You can start to imagine, you know, like, well, why is that person slumped over? Right. They could be having a medical emergency, very, you know, generic, a cardiac event. They could be drug overdose, right? Mm-hmm. It could be all those things. They could be having a diabetic episode, all that type of stuff. But in this case, it turned out to be, you know, too much alcohol, too much drugs, something along those lines. But the moment that our firefighters engaged with this person, the call just changed. You know, he was from all accounts, you know, the person was kind of squirrely, we'll say, wasn't very cooperative, appeared to keep trying to start the vehicle to maybe flee, leave. But as you know, in the end, it ended up being that he had a gun in his waist, you know, and it was, you know, and here's the deal. It was missed. It was actually, you know, it was missed. There was a kind of a loose pat down by police, and that gun was missed.
How pissed were you though with the cops for missing that?
I was pissed. I mean, it was one of those things where it's such a fine line. You know, the firefighters and the company officers, they're making split time decisions. You know, we can, you know, a call back to the good old days when you're going through training, and remember, you know, is the scene safe? You ever, you know, when you got into practice,
BSI, scene secure.
Yeah, BSI, is the scene safe? Da 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 da. You know, you kind of do this role play thing. Well, in real world, yeah, of course you want to make sure that the scene is safe. Right. So many variables, right? I mean, you have to look at, especially like on a vehicle that's pulled off to the side of the road. There's all kinds of hazards around you. First of all, you're on a road. Yeah. And, you know, you have people driving by and they don't give a shit that you're there, and they don't care that your lights are on. They just don't care. Right. So there, you know, that's what I mean by, you know, just overall the level of respect to responders with their lights on. The fire trucks are out on the street. Police officers are on the street. All this kind of stuff. And people just whizzing, like driving by, like they don't give a shit. Yeah. They just don't care. And, you know, it really does come back to, when you ask how pissed I was, it comes back to the job is hard enough.
Yeah.
You don't have to miss something like that and potentially allow it to get that much harder.
Yeah.
So
could you imagine being on that call that we just watched, and right before, you know, the tones went off, you were like, I'm gonna go take a shit real quick, and then the call comes in, right, and then you hear the gunshot, like, I gotta take a shit anymore. I just did.
No kidding, right? Wow, that was quite the review of that video there, and kind of takes your breath away when you realize what's actually happening in a lot of these cities and the calls that we go on as firefighters and police officers, all the first responders out there. We really want to thank you for what you do. When we are looking at these videos, and please share with us if you'd like to see more of this content in our podcasts. But as we start to look at this particular video and any other future videos, we want to be clear that we're not passing any judgment. We want to make sure that we're taking something meaningful and maybe perhaps offering something educational about some of these videos that we may review in future episodes. The best part about it is that we have something to learn and something to offer. And so as long as we're looking after ourselves, looking after for each other, watch our backs, and use your best practices, follow your policies and procedures, and make sure to be taking care of each other, we're going to be just fine as a community. We really appreciate your support at the Original Firefighter Podcast, and make sure, as always, be safe.